Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Great to have you in on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel back at it. Extended coverage of the Matt Rhule, Trev Alberts press conference. It wound down right around 2:45 or so. And we're up and running, ready to go and discuss thoughts from the side sessions from Trev Alberts and Matt Rhule. You heard the podium, presumably, if you tuned into ESPN Lincoln or 590 or our friends out in Kearney, Hastings, Grand Island, or Columbus. So a little more intimate one-on-one with Coach Rhule and Trev Alberts off to the side with the media. So some of that audio and comments and questions coming up. Numbers to get in for you, 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Can email the show, Chris at HailVarsity.com. Can watch the show as we stream for you on ESPN Lincoln Facebook, ESPN Lincoln Twitter, and the Hail Varsity Twitter account as well, at HVarsity Radio. We invite you to give us a follow. Chris Schmidt, that's me, at Schmidt_radio. Elijah Herbel, at Herbal Essence for him. So thoughts and reaction from the press conference, but more so application moving forward. Matt Rhule, how his plan and his vision can work for Nebraska moving forward. How soon can it work for Nebraska moving forward? Those are some of the things on my mind. We have financial details. We have just a Scrooge McDuck-size pot of money for assistant coaches, even more so than last year's $5.15 million. So it's all there, Elijah. The money, the facilities, the brand, the history. Does Nebraska finally have the coach to get it done, to get it back to some shadow of what it was brought into the Big Ten, recruited into the Big Ten to be? We'll try and answer that with Paul Myerberg, college football insider with USA Today. He's your matchmaker. He's the first national guy. I think it was October 12th. Matt Rhule fired October 10th to go out and say, this is a fit. Get these two entities together. Get Nebraska, get Matt Rhule, get them together. That has happened. It happened by 11 o'clock per Trev on Thanksgiving Day, maybe Black Friday. But that 24-hour window was when all sides accepted a yes. Here's the offer. I don't know. Well, okay, let me come back to you. And Elijah, it sounds like family played a major part of this for Matt Rhule, specifically his wife and kids, saying, this place is going to be awesome for us, dad or husband, do it. And, I think it sounds like Rhule had plenty of options. It sounds like Trev had plenty of calls out as well. So I think both sides covered. And what's interesting, too, is you get those moments in sports. You get forks in the road. And I'm not comparing this hire to Michael Jordan. I'm not comparing this hire to drafting Peyton Manning. But think about how things went, right? Think about that moment where the Portland Trail Blazers select Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan. Well, you can't coach height, right? And Michael Jordan slipped down to number 3 in Chicago in the 84 draft. Or you have Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning. Who do we go with? What'd Ryan Leaf do on the night before draft night? What'd Peyton Manning? Just if you look at any of the 30 for 30s, right? Who do you go with? Well, Indianapolis went with Peyton Manning. The Chargers got stuck with Ryan Leaf. You wonder as we talk linkage and history, Nebraska wants to get where Wisconsin's been. Not presumably, even this year's Wisconsin would be nice for Nebraska next year. That's 6-6 and bowl eligible. But the point is the two names we've heard a lot about as it got down to win in time was Matt Rhule, Luke Fickell. Okay, and Nebraska makes their announcement. They get Rhule. Wisconsin, 24 hours later, they get Luke Fickell, and it's two very different feelings in two very different states today.
And I'd venture to say, and I don't have any inside information, I don't have any people in Trev's office feeding me anything about the coaching search, and I'm sure this is going to be one of those things where we're going to get an article in 8 years looking back at the coaching search from 2022.
And Mitch Sherman will write it.
Mitch Sherman's 100%. I think we're going to talk to Mitch tomorrow. So maybe
we love Mitch.
Maybe we'll ask him if he's already got this in the works. But I think it's going to be one of those things where, you know what, Trev did do a deep dive. I believe most of the things that Trev says. The one thing I don't necessarily believe is that he says from the start, Matt Rhule's been our 1A guy. Matt Rhule had a job before, and I believe you were probably still looking at him, knowing some of the things on the wall. But I believe at that point, you were probably looking at Fickell. And you hear about some of the things, well, Trev called up Urban Meyer. Trev was talking to Urban Meyer in his office. And if you believe that to be true, wouldn't it make sense that Trev was talking to that guy to talk to him about a guy that he took over from the interim role at Ohio State and then was his defensive coordinator for a couple seasons?
Versus offering Herb the job.
Makes a lot of sense there that, you know what, Fickell can be your number one guy. And then, Matt Rhule's available. And based on what we've seen through our process, we like Matt Rhule just as much, if not more, than Fickell. Let's kick tires on that a little bit, see what's going on here. And I 100% believe that Trev Alberts, I wouldn't go as far as to say he settled on Matt Rhule. I think I'd go as far as to say he picked Matt Rhule over Fickell.
He drafted.
Yes.
He drafted Matt Rhule over Luke Fickell or 13 other names we can have fun with for the next 8 years until this article comes out about the Nebraska coaching search. But no, and listen, the research that went into this, it really comes down to vision, and Matt Rhule said it, alignment, and you hear about it and you kind of go, yeah, that's great to say, but it's super important. Do you have a fly in the ointment somewhere along the way? In a lot of places, in a lot of companies and universities and sports hirings, you have somebody that just their whole heart ain't into it, or they're objecting, or they didn't get their way, or they wanted this. I mean, undermining can happen, okay? And it slows the process. But you want to talk about same page. What wins in the Big Ten? What won for Michigan a second year? It was toughness. It was gritty. It was physical domination. You had more talent with Ohio State. You had more big bad dudes on the line of scrimmage in a game full of big bad dudes that are going to play on Sundays. Development, toughness, identity. Nebraska's not had an identity, quite honestly, since the Osborne/Solich era with option power football. Bo's identity was gash plays. His identity was guys that they developed and took a little bit of a flyer on, and they were really good. Bo's identity was to be really good against the pass, right, defensively. Okay, toughness. I think it was okay to question Nebraska's toughness during the Riley era. I think it was Scott's mission to try and make this team tougher. And while they were tougher, they still weren't deep.
Well, think about the three prerequisites: toughness, development, and identity. Think about those three. And I think you had development and identity with Mike Riley, but I think you lacked a lot of toughness. I think with Scott Frost, he built the toughness, but what suffered was development and identity. You didn't really have a team identity or any team development under Scott, but you had. I think you had toughness.
Sure.
I don't question the toughness of the team under Scott Frost, but I do question the development of the athletes and the identity. And now you're hoping for a guy in Matt Rhule that's going to be able to bring the marriage of all three of those together. And he's proven that he can do it at Baylor. He's proven he can do it at Temple.
And he's excited. I mean, he's not discouraged. That's why he gets up every morning, is to develop. He gets up every morning to try and have the toughest football team ready for Saturday. And he knows what wins in this league. And it's going to be running the football and stopping the run. Now, as a coach, you're going to look at your roster and say, what are we good at? And let's do that. And if they're better, and he kind of laid it out there with, I had 3 NFL wide receivers, so one year we threw the ball a little more, and that worked okay down in Waco. But for the most part, he wants to run the football, stop the run, and provide a slew of body punches. So you have the lockstep vision laid out. Now those words need to translate into action with recruiting, with development, on-field performance. You can talk about it, and Nebraska fans are sick of hearing every 5 years all the great talk, right? It's awesome to hear and be fired up and have hope, and it's okay to feel that way today too. I'm not pouring water on it, but you need to see it translate, and a guy that has a history of doing that, it's more believable it can happen a third time than not at all.
And talk about 2 guys being in lockstep at a press conference with Matt Rhule and Trev Alberts today. Those guys just echoed each other's sentiments. They seemed like that's just a pairing that's going to work well together. When Trev laid out, this is what I want from my football coach 2.5 months ago, and then you hear what Rhule says today, it just seems like that perfect match of everything Trev is looking for, Matt Rhule almost seems to fit to a T. And now that's not saying that Matt Rhule is going to be the perfect hire for Nebraska. It's not saying he's going to get it turned around quickly, but it does let you know that I think the search did go how Trev Alberts planned for it to go, and I think he got a guy that he thinks is going to work. Does it actually work? We shall see, but if you trust Trev Alberts, I think you trust that he got the guy that he's been trying to get this entire time.
Numbers to get in today, and we'll have open phones for you around 4:40 to 5, and then again right around 5:30 or so. Bill Doleman will join us in about an hour and a half. Always love tapping into the pride of Fairbury, longtime Nebraska football man. Charlie McBride less than an hour from now, and in about 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes, Paul Myerberg, National College Football Insider with USA Today. We'll have different parts also from Trev and Coach Rhule. Also wanted to touch on here the Mickey factor, because that was a second question asked. Friend Brian Christopherson asked it, and have you talked to Mickey? There's been a quick discussion. There needs to be further discussion. If you're Matt Rhule and your history shows where you've been, you've made hires at Temple, you've made hires at Baylor, and you've made some either retention hires or outside hires, he can live and they can win without Mickey Joseph. It is possible. But are things going to go smoother? Is the current recruiting class going to be much more at ease? Is the current roster, and I think Matt Rhule, we talked about his communication ability. Part of being a great communicator is also the ability to listen. He is going to listen to the players. I think to a T, every player is going to go in there and say, man, we didn't sell out, we didn't tap out, we didn't punt it because we love playing for Mickey Joseph. He inspired us. He made us better. He was real with us. I know our record wasn't great, but 4-8 could have been 1-10. Okay? And I think Mickey Joseph's work you cannot ignore. I think Mickey's ability to build relationships you can't ignore. And you need him and you want him on this staff if he wants to be on this staff. It's really kind of up to Mickey. Mickey, let's double your salary. Mickey, can you go back and be a number 2? Can you be part of the team versus the quarterback again? And that's really what it is to me. And Mickey may have other options to be a head coach. Mickey may have options to go be a number 2 for more money somewhere else. I don't know what's driving Mick other than he chose to come back to Nebraska a second time in his career. So wish him the best. Who's with us real quick?
Chris is on the line with us.
Chris, go ahead. Thanks for calling.
Hey, guys, great show. With Mickey on the staff, though, it's bowl game or bust first year. You got to go to a bowl game.
I think you got to go anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, there's, if Mickey's gone, then the players aren't going to have divided loyalties, and if you win 4 games, which he can't win 1 or 2. that is
no, absolutely not. And I don't think that's
he has
that's
elsewhere.
acceptable.
That's what he's done the other two places. But I like the Rhule hire. Not excited about it, but it's okay. But the players, if they don't make a bowl game, be like, hey, Mickey would have got us to a bowl game. When we were a bowl team last year, just a couple of bounces of the ball here or there, and Mickey would have had us into a bowl. So if they don't make a bowl game next year, that's going to fracture that team, and it's just not going to be good.
I disagree because winning cures all, and it's hard to be like, well, I'm unhappy that this guy's head coach because Mickey would have taken us to a bowl game too. If you're winning, I don't think that's the mentality within the locker room.
Right. Well, yeah, if they make a bowl game, it'll be fine.
Okay.
But if they don't make a bowl game, then they're going to be like, well, why did we do this?
You just got to get
kept Mickey. He would have brought in his own staff, would have fixed the stuff that was screwed up. All the close games, we would have won a couple more. We did win a couple of close games, so we'll see. I mean, it's good to get a new crew in here, and Rhule does pound the both sides of the ball, and that is good. He was not super excited about recruiting, if you noticed that. It was like, yeah, I get 2 3-star guys, and we
Chris, we're up against it. Thank you for the phone call. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll spend time with Paul Myerberg, USA Today. More of your calls on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for your time. Hail Varsity Radio on a Monday. We had the Matt Rhule, Trev Alberts press conference for you live. And the man who said, you two need to get together. That is Nebraska and Matt Rhule, longtime college football writer and insider with USA Today. Paul Myerberg with us. Paul, thanks for a few minutes. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good day for Nebraska. Good day for Matt Rhule.
It is a really good day, and the vision is the same vision with what Trev wanted, with what Matt Rhule brings to the party, and each side a little back and forth, give and take, but the deal got done in that 24-hour window between Thanksgiving and Black Friday. Paul, let's just set it up for our listeners, and let's talk about your interaction with Matt Rhule and the first time you had a chance to see him or cover him up close. You've detailed just what kind of a coach and what kind of a winner he has been.
Yeah, and what's been universal about Matt Rhule's success is that there are no shortcuts. There is not a lot of deviation from his very specific blueprint, and it really requires a number of adults in the room. And I think for Nebraska fans to see the way that he develops and builds this program, it'll be a refreshing wake-up from what you've seen in the very recent past. So I think the most important thing that you can identify with Rhule is that no matter what sort of end goal you're imagining, whether you imagine that he can win a national championship at Nebraska, or if he can win a Big Ten championship, or if he can win a Big Ten West championship, what you're going to see from the very start is a very clean and careful series of player evaluation steps, player development steps that bring this roster into the condition that he believes that it needs to be in to win, period, however you think that winning is going to take form. Matt Rhule, from the very start of this process, was a very obvious choice for Nebraska for me, because I know what his mindset is. I know what sort of culture that he wants to build. And if you kind of list out what that is, when you slap that on top of Nebraska, that's just not a Venn diagram. That's just two concentric circles. So I think he matches up from a personality, from a chemistry, and a culture perspective just perfectly with Nebraska. Anytime I read or heard someone say in the last several months that this would not happen or that it wouldn't be a fit, it showed that they didn't know Matt Rhule and they didn't know Trev Alberts, because this is a very, very good fit. No idea if it's going to work, guys, because you don't know what the future holds, but all the pieces are in place from a coach, leadership, and resources perspective for Nebraska to gain a foothold back in the national conversation.
Paul Myerberg with us, USA Today college football insider, joining us here on Hail Varsity Radio, as he was, I think it was 24 hours after Rhule was released from Carolina. Paul, you had the story up on Nebraska and, of course, Coach Rhule. Let me follow up with the end goal. What can Nebraska become under Coach Rhule? I mean, what's their ceiling?
So the ceiling, there is no ceiling, guys. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to fluff up Matt Rhule or because I want to blow smoke. There's no ceiling because the track record speaks for itself. What he did at Temple and what he did at Baylor, to me, are two of the most successful and unprecedented coaching jobs of the last generation. And to understand that, you need to know where Temple was, where he brought them, and you need to know what he inherited at Baylor and what he left there. Two unbelievably good coaching jobs, both done the same exact way. We're going to get down to our base level. We are going to identify the 3 or 4 or 5 things that are important to us, and we are never going to budge 1 inch from those things. And when he would go to practice, when he was at Temple or Baylor, high energy, high enthusiasm, high contact, and there was no give-in. There was never, as he would say at Temple, don't put your hands on your hips, because here at Temple we don't put our hands on our hips, or don't bend over at the waist. We don't bend over at the waist here at Temple or at Baylor. So it's this preaching of the very basic kind of ethos of the program, and you guys can tell me if this sounds familiar. It's about winning up front. It's about player development. It's about finding the right people from an emotional and mental perspective as much as a physical perspective. And I think certain things are universal. So when you combine the fact that NIL in place right now in Nebraska is very powerful, they're in the second best or maybe the co-number 1 conference in the country. They have a very clear pathway into a 12-team playoff with just that very basic level of 10 or 11-win success. There's no reason why Nebraska can't do incredibly big things under Matt Rhule as long as people there are patient. I know patience is at a premium everywhere in the world, certainly in Nebraska, which is in the midst of the worst 6-year run in decades. But if you are patient and you watch this thing through, the results that you see eventually will pay off in a big, big way. Because the track record says that what he had at Baylor, what he had at Temple, he has that and more at his disposal at Nebraska.
Yeah, and you say be patient, Paul. But with Baylor and Temple, it was a rough first year in both places, and I think some Husker fans are worried about what the first year could look like with Matt Rhule at Nebraska, and I don't think 1-11 is going to be something Matt Rhule's doing next year, but what do you expect in a year 1 from Matt Rhule? Is this going to be, he's at a place where he can start from a higher place than he was at Baylor or Temple, or you think it's going to be rough year 1 still?
I think it's going to be rough, but no, I don't think it's going to be 1-11. Also, guys, the landscape has changed. I did mention NIL a second ago. In addition to that, in the transfer portal, I do think that he's going to be much better equipped to compile a roster that maybe, is a year ahead of where things were at Temple and Baylor. Year 2 at Temple and Baylor, they were 6-win teams. Maybe he can get there in year 1, but I would just hesitate to say that you're going to go to next year and expect anything more than 4-8, 5-7, or 6-6. I just think you have to be very realistic. Because like I said, does he want to win? Obviously. You don't go like 1-11 in your first year just so you look good in year 3. I know how much he struggled through year 1 at Temple and Baylor, or how painful those years were for him. But I do think that you can't expect them to hit the ground running. There's too much done that there's too much that he wants to do behind the scenes, building the program from Sunday to Friday to really yield some sort of breakthrough 8-win season year 1. I would really pump the brakes on that a bit. But no, 1-11 seems ridiculous. There's enough talent on the roster. You got 3 wins in non-conference play conceivably. I just don't think 1-11 is anywhere close to the realm of possibility.
Well, and Matt, to follow up on that and to zoom out and look a little bit more big picture past year 1, Greg McElroy in his podcast a couple days ago said he talked to a couple people close to Matt, and it seemed early in this process that Matt would only really pick up the phone for 2 schools, and he didn't name the 2 schools. I think we can assume one of them was Penn State. But he followed up by saying, or if another right fit popped up, and by right fit, the people close to Matt said that was somewhere Matt felt he could go and win a national championship. What is your reaction to that? Do you think that, I don't want to say national championship is the goal for Matt Rhule at Nebraska and should be the goal for Nebraska fans, but what do you make of that as, a potential aspiration for Matt Rhule at Nebraska, national championship? Is that feasible?
Yes, it is feasible. You got to be ridiculous. Scott Frost could have won a national championship at Nebraska if he had done it right. The Nebraska program can win a national championship. They play in the Big Ten. They're extremely well endowed. They have new facilities. They're an attractive place to play. They're an attractive place to recruit to. So I just think that's a ridiculous concept that Nebraska can't win another national championship. But to your idea, yeah, I think early last week when it seemed like, I've always been very confident this was going to come together, but when it seemed like it might not, my mind went to maybe the idea that Rhule would wait to see what happened at A&M. He knows Texas. People love him in Texas. Would he wait to see what happened with Jimbo Fisher and maybe look at that job? I'm not speaking in terms of knowing that to be the case, but maybe that was something that popped into my mind. But his affection and his infatuation maybe with Nebraska, and I believe he mentioned this today, it predates the last 60 days, guys. Like, this is not a dude who got fired at Carolina and thought, where can I get a job? What looks good right now? I think he's been tied to Nebraska from an emotional perspective for years, because he is a guy, like a lot of us, when we were growing up, if you turn the TV on Saturday and you got 4 games on TV that day, one of them was going to be Cornhuskers, and you're going to watch them kick someone's butt, the moment they walked onto the field. And I think if you're a certain age, you watched that, you were drawn to it, it appealed to you. And for a guy who was looking for a challenge and looking to put his imprint and write his name into some sort of history books as one of the best coaches of his time, Nebraska provides that opportunity. So I never bought into it, even for a moment, that he was not interested, because I knew he was interested. And I'm really just I'm glad it came together, because it is a good marriage. And more than anything, I do want to take a moment to give Trev Alberts a lot of credit. One of the cleanest searches and hires of my career that I've seen. And more than that, as you guys probably know, a lot of ADs, a lot of programs will be highfalutin about who they offer a job to, who they talk to, and what sort of reciprocated interest they've seen. Alberts identified Rhule, and he made it happen. And I think that's going to be for the betterment of Nebraska, obviously, and I think that'll end up defining his tenure as AD, with his ability to get him to sign on the dotted line.
Paul Myerberg with us, USA Today College Football Insider reaction to the Rhule hire and presser today. Paul, a thought on Luke Fickell, because we've done the old carousel game for the last 70+ days. Here's this name this week, right? And I think you're right. I think Rhule was probably, as Trev said, 1A or right there. Your reaction to Fickell in Wisconsin? We thought Fickell may be a name for Nebraska. We really respect what Fickell's done. We respect what Rhule has done. But him landing in Wisconsin, great get for the Badgers. I know it's not been real easy treading today for him.
Yeah, it's a great hire for Wisconsin. It's my belief, not based on talking to anyone necessarily close to this process in terms of how it unfolded with Nebraska and Fickell, but you would believe, based off the financial just deals that you're seeing from each school, that Nebraska had at Fickell. I know money is not the be-all, end-all, but when you're seeing the difference in terms of what they're going to pay Fickell and what they're eventually going to pay Rhule, clearly the dollars and cents were there for Nebraska to make that hire. I think it goes back to an idea, and not to steal thunder away from Wisconsin and Fickell. That is a fantastic hire that could take that program in a totally different direction. But if you just read the tea leaves of this thing, and no one actually knows what Trev Alberts is thinking, because, like I said, no one talked to him. Mm-hmm. But if you read the tea leaves on this, I don't think you just come out of it thinking that Alberts believes Matt Rhule is a top 5 coach in the country. My tea leaf reading on this is that if every coach in the country was available, that Trev Alberts would be gravitated towards Matt Rhule, because of all the things that he mentioned when Scott Frost was fired and what he mentioned again today. Just the checklist and check marks that he wanted, that was universal. What he mentioned in October or September and what he mentioned today, Matt Rhule just fits and checks the boxes. So I don't want to get into a competition between who did the better hire. I think each hire in its own way is fantastic. But I don't believe if anyone was available to a degree, that Nebraska would have gone elsewhere. I think they eventually would have landed on Matt Rhule as their guy.
Paul, quickly here, about 15 seconds. It seems like almost assumed that these two names are going to be tied together for a while, Fickell and Rhule, and their success at their next respective stops.
Oh, no question about it. And you're going to see this comparison, because this is going to be a key rivalry, even without divisions, for who people recruit, who people play, in terms of who's the third or second best team in the conference. They're tied at the hip. Fickell's going to win the battle because he's got a better team in 22 or 23 or 24. But I do believe that down the line, Matt Rhule has what it takes to win the war.
Paul Myerberg, USA Today. Paul, best to you. Thanks for the time as always.
Thank you, guys. Talk again soon.
All right, there he is, Paul Myerberg. Good stuff. Up close for a lot of his career with Matt Rhule coverage at Temple, at Baylor, now at Nebraska. Contract specifics next with Hail Varsity.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Coach McBride, 20 minutes away. It's Matt Rhule press conference day. We'll hear from Trev Alberts, some of the side session from Trev in a moment. And phone lines open here till 5 for you. At 466-3776, 800-825-5865. What you heard from Rhule, if some of you were on the fence before today, Are you, dare I say, in the boat now? Again, it all needs to translate to Saturday at 11 when they kick off, or Saturday night when they kick off, or spring football or portal or wherever you stand on Mickey. And if I'm putting money down, Elijah's money and my money, I think Mickey's back. But
it simply, to me, comes down to opportunity elsewhere. I don't think it comes down to does Mickey want to stay. I think Mickey does want to stay, and I think Mickey would happily be a part of Matt Rhule's staff, and I think the dollars and cents would have to line up with that as well. But I think it also comes down to the fact that does a place like Georgia Tech offer the job? Does a place like UNLV offer the job? There could be other opportunities out there for Mickey, and if he gets a head coaching opportunity at a place that he thinks fits for him, I think he's gone. I think he'd be dumb to not leave. But if that opportunity doesn't come, I don't think he's going to go be a wide receivers coach anywhere else. No, that's what I'll say.
Right, or recruiting coordinator. I mean, it's got to be a head gig. Is UNLV a spot that would be wise to look at Mickey Joseph? Their job is open. Mickey'd kill it in Vegas. Mickey'd make money in Vegas. But if there's, do I go to a lower tier program for a few more $100,000? Because you got to believe Mickey's going to make six figures to stay, or if he's making a base of 600, put him right around 850. I mean, take care of him for sure. But here's the Matt Rhule pay. Brady Altman's pay of Varsity had these numbers, tweeting them out. Also, Mitch Sherman. But start date through the end of 2023 is $5.5 million. So year one, $5.5 million. Year two, that's up $1 million to $6.5, and it continues to escalate $1 million a year through the length of this contract of 2030, and that final number is 12.5. So it starts out where you're getting $1 million a year bump, and then from 2026 to 2027, it jumps from 8.5 to 10 million, and then another $1.5 million incentive based in 2028, 2029, and then 2030. So Rhule sees this thing through, and Nebraska's playing on New Year's Day again. There's bonuses, there's money, there's happiness in the state of Nebraska to the tune of $12.5 million. And that's the reality here. 8 for $74 million. 8 years, $74 million. And 90% of that remaining salary, the buyout for Rhule, if fired by Nebraska without cause, 90% of the remaining salary. So as Mitch tweets out, so if Nebraska cuts ties with Rhule after 3 years, he's owed $41 million. If fired after 4 years, it's $32 million. So that's the number. Who's with us?
Yep, Pete on the line.
Pete, go ahead. Thanks for calling, bud.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. We're doing well. What do you say?
Well, I'll tell you what. I didn't know much about Matt Rhule, but I guess I learned quite a bit. I really liked what he had to say. He seems to me like he wants practices to be really tough. We're gonna get stronger and better, and we're gonna do it through practice so we can play on Saturdays and win. The other thing that kind of impressed me is he could have sat home and made this same kind of money. So he's not lazy. He decided to come to Nebraska and work, and basically he's making himself the same money. I liked what I heard. He seems like he's a builder, and he's committed to that. And if you listen to Trev Alberts, the guy does check off on all the boxes of what Trev was talking about. So I guess I'm pretty happy in the state of Nebraska. I think maybe we've got a winner here that's going to carry us into the future and get back to old Nebraska football. So congratulations to them both. I'm pretty happy.
Pete, thanks for the phone call, bud. Appreciate it. And, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of Nebraska fans today after getting a chance to see and meet through the press conference, Matt Rhule. And obviously there's the Trev camp, there's the non-Trev camp, but Trev worked his ass off for this, and it was not an easy deal. It wasn't. And he got it done. It's just got to It's got to be right.
Well, and one thing that really stood out to me, and Pete hit on this, the fact that Matt Rhule could be sitting at home still making the same amount of money, but he said something at the press conference, which I think may have been somewhat alluding to his days with the Carolina Panthers, but he said you can work hard and not be miserable.
Yeah.
And that's huge, because not only is that great for a football coach anywhere, it is also a motto that could represent the entire state of Nebraska. You can be a hard worker and not be miserable. That just seems to represent so many people that I've run into within the state of Nebraska. People that work hard and love what they do. And it seems like Matt Rhule thinks that Nebraska is a place where he can work hard, put in 80-hour weeks like you have to as a college football coach, and not be miserable.
Jeff chimes in. You both wanted Scott or Mickey to win 6 games. Now be sure you hold Rhule till 6 wins. Yeah, I think 6 wins is appropriate, Jeff, but you're not going to force Matt Rhule with this contract. Well, better get to a bowl game in year 1 or else. I mean, you're not going to be doing this a year from now. So 6 is ideal. Is it doable? Paul Myerberg's like, look, with what you got and what you got to go, the direction you got to go, 4 to 5 to 6, that's the window it sounds like. What do you retain? What gets better with that retention? And what do you go get in the portal? And what do you keep from a recruiting standpoint? I mean, all of that's still up in the air right now.
It comes down to how much better does the offensive line look next year.
And do you keep Feast and do you keep Robinson? I mean, do you keep some of these guys that played really good football, finish strong for you on the defensive side of the ball? And who do you keep on staff? Who do you bring in that's better than what you're getting rid of? Who's with us?
We go up to Omaha where Jonathan's with us.
Jonathan, go ahead. Thanks for calling.
Hey, guys. One thing I like about this hire is just kind of, the simplicity of it all. I feel like the last few years we've been hearing from the administration, we need, Nebraska guys, Nebraska this, Nebraska that. Well, the nice thing with this is he's the best guy that's available. It makes the most sense in a simple logistical, way. And also on his end, I liked his speech. I also liked how he wasn't saying, championships. He was just keeping it realistic, being like, let's start from point A and then get to point B, not like how it was.
He said it was the process, a day-by-day thing.
Yeah, it's the process.
It was, not like how it was with Frost, we're going to win championships, they're going to adjust to us. And the nice thing about Rhule, he was realistic. Hey, let's focus on the West. Let's start small. So I think that it was refreshing personally and realistic.
And Jonathan, thanks for the phone call. And you've got Northwestern won 1 football game this year. Okay,
against who?
Against Nebraska.
Oh yeah.
They won 1 game the entire football season, and they didn't win a game on the continental United States soil.
Nebraska kicked an onside kick against a 1-11 team, up by 2 scores.
Up by 11.
It sounds worse now than it did then.
Oh. Pour a drink. We referenced the onside. We'll wind down hour 1. Bill Doleman next hour. Charlie McBride coming up. More of your calls at Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, it's Hail Varsity Radio for hour 1. 10 minutes away, Mr. Blackshirt. Charlie McBride, I promise you we'll get to some of what Trev and Coach Rhule had to say off to the side session. And good stuff from Trev Alberts, and we'll have more thoughts on the elephant that is Mickey Joseph. It's a compliment. I think you move forward. You have Satterfield as the OC here. That is a strong possibility. And if you're going to go out, might as well go out taking out two playoff teams, Clemson and Tennessee, like that South Carolina offense did. Email to get to. Greg from Michigan writes in, I thought the Rhule press conference, I know Trev talked about not wanting to win the press conference, but Rhule won the press conference, and Trev too also. I love hearing about the physicality talk. I'll take him until proven otherwise.
Well, what else can you do?
and I'll get behind Coach Rhule. Go Big Red. That is Greg up in Michigan. Hail Varsity is presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, Go Currency is real easy to check that out. But interesting day, pretty telling day, and a celebratory day for a lot of Nebraska fans.
And we're going to start hearing more and more about what, a lot of people think is the next most important part about this hire is the assistant coaches, as you alluded to. Satterfield looks like set to become the offensive coordinator. $7 million is what Rhule has to work with, give or take, for his assistants. We're to know Evan Cooper is in the boat as a defensive backs coach, or at least cornerbacks coach, and he's been Matt Rhule's recruiting coordinator back at Baylor as well. And then you also have a favorite of mine from growing up, Terrence Potroast Knighton.
Potroast, yes.
Yeah, so he was an assistant defensive line coach with the Panthers. He's going to be joining the staff.
coming to town.
Joining the staff in some capacity.
Okay.
And I'll always remember him. He had the sack on Tom Brady in the AFC Championship game that allowed Denver to go to the Super Bowl and get absolutely slaughtered by the Seahawks. He was on that team.
He opened that door for you.
But hey, he got us to the Super Bowl. He sacked Tom Brady at crunch time in the AFC Championship game. I'll always remember Terrence Knighton for that. Maybe I'll get a chance to ask him about it at some point in the next couple of months. Maybe
what you
the defensive line coach. We'll see.
Yeah, well, Elijah Robinson's who you got to go after.
Yeah, let's kick the tires after
from A&M.
But I'll warn you on one thing. It ain't hard to be recruiter of the year whenever you have the amount of money that A&M's offering to recruit. So I think he's a great defensive line coach. I just want to throw that piece out there. I've seen that report a lot. Well, he's recruiter of the year. Well, he also had millions of dollars he could throw at every single kid. I'd probably be a pretty damn recruiter if I could throw that amount of money at kids. So
you're pretty high on yourself, aren't you?
How hard could it be whenever you're like, hey, I know you really like Miami and whatnot, but I'll give you $3 million if you come play here. Like, the job can't be that difficult.
He recruited Myles Garrett.
That he did. That was pre-NIL,
That was pre-NIL. Make your own SEC A&M oil money joke where you want, but it was pre-NIL. It's pre-NIL.
He also developed Myles Garrett, too, so let's throw that in there as well.
That's an important factor. I'm going to come back with the Elijah Herbel take. Well, develop Myles Garrett. He's 6'7", 285, and he runs a 4.3. What do you mean develop? You told him to go kill the guy with the football. I'm messing.
No, Myles, leave your helmet on. You can't use it as a weapon.
No, absolutely. Charlie McBride. We'll get Coach Charlie's take on today with Matt Rhule and Nebraska. Also, I'm sure he has a thought on Wisconsin based on his time up there in Badgerland. Hour 2 coming up. Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity Radio, a Monday edition, Hour 2. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel were presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. We welcome in Mr. Blackshirt himself. It's a Monday with Charlie McBride. Coach, how's the weather? How you doing?
Well, is everybody happy?
Well, I think for the most part. I think the press conference today maybe made some folks happy that were not. I mean, they're happy with the Iowa win by Nebraska, and then you get the Matt Rhule hiring. And
well, did you see that somebody already went and updated Matt Rhule's Wikipedia page today to include it? His record at Nebraska is 1-0 with a win at the first press conference.
Yeah, so Nebraska won the press conference today, Coach McBride. I wanted to ask you, though, with Trev spending $7 million for the assistant coach's salary pool, you coming back to coach another year?
I'll tell you what, I don't know. You know, Social Security's going up a little bit, so I probably will take that.
You're telling me you're good. I want to get your thoughts though on the hire, on Matt Rhule. What are some of your impressions as you got a chance to listen to him?
I didn't get it. You know, I don't get close to the situation because I'm not around to interview people and talk to people that know him. And I think you go. It's kind of like anything else. You go to a school to recruit a kid. You talk to probably 5 or 6 different people just to find out a little bit about him and his character and things like that. I think are important, and the family, and so you don't know those things. And
I have a feeling inside me that I am very, I would say, close to adamant that I will not like it if they don't keep Mickey. Okay, and I even think that Bill would be an asset too. Mm-hmm. A lot of times coaches have their buddies, and to me, I've always been against that in coaching. That I think that's what number one. That's what doesn't help staff really, because you really aren't learning. I mean, you have the same guys all the time. You know, and you have a few different thoughts in there. Sometimes you learn a little bit, mm-hmm. but he's been an angel almost to the program, and Bill has done a great job as far as coming in. People just don't understand what they had to go through. Neither one of them knew what the defense or the offense was. Mm-hmm. And in a 2 games or 3 games later, they're the guys running it. And the players probably knew more of the terminology than they did. And so it was tough on both of them until, you could see them getting better and better and better. And you could definitely see the effort. And, and the tackling and all the things, the fundamental things were starting to get better. So, it worked out. And they decided that Mickey, would not be the person, but that's, I think, he deserves to be part of the program somewhere and be paid handsomely for it too. And Bill's been around a long time and is a good special teams guy, especially, I think. And when you put your mind to one thing and you're not doing one thing one day and one thing the next, it's pretty easy. It makes it a lot easier for you. But they don't realize what a good recruiter he is in the areas that he knows.
Well, I think you're right, and we've said that I think if you come in as an outsider, you'd be foolish not to look at the assets and resources, and you nailed two in Mickey and Bill that have done really nice work and know the program and are really, really good recruiters. Would it be hard, put yourself in Mickey's shoes, would it be hard to go back knowing you didn't get the job, maybe you get your salary doubled, and go back to what you were doing?
No, I don't think it'd be hard. No, I think it'd be, there's things that, he can do. He'll get another job if he doesn't get asked. I would assume right away that I knew as soon as something didn't come up right away that Trev and the president or who went to the business deal, and I've never been for that little saying, but because business can be changed, but I thought maybe they'd, that might be part of the thing that they would keep him. But from what I can just gather, it doesn't seem like that is going to happen. Although it could happen, right now. Have
you heard definitively that they're neither being kept, or is that just your gut?
No, I just felt like that. I felt like that they would be told he would, if they were taking the president or whoever would say, we'd like you to keep these guys.
Sure.
And so on and so forth. Some staffs do that now. I mean, the athletic director says, I know Brian Cabral at Colorado went through about 5 coaches. I mean, just for one guy. But he did, and he went to another job, got fired, and actually came back and is working with them now. And because that's how much they thought of him. And so there's things in athletics that can work out, and the way things are changing, maybe they even add assistant coaches to the 10, and that would be something that probably wouldn't hurt anything as long as, you eliminate something on the other end. But who knows? Right now, that's not I don't think that's even in the works. I think there's too many other things in front of it. But Mickey knows the business and knows the recruiting areas, and that's right now what's the name of the game going to be, But I do think that he'll spend more time in the state. Mm-hmm. I think he'll take it really seriously, the state, which makes me feel good.
Charlie McBride's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking Matt Rhule in the press conference today. And Charlie, looking ahead here, one of the topics that we had in the first hour was expectations for year one for Matt Rhule. And some people are saying 6 should be bare minimum. If that was your standard for Frost and your standard for Mickey, it should be 6 for Rhule in year one. And based on what you've seen in your conversations with former players, former coaches, how much do you think Matt Rhule has to work with, assuming there is little roster turnover, and that's a big assumption? But with what is currently on roster at Nebraska, what do you think is a realistic expectation for Matt Rhule in year one?
Well, that's the scary part right now. I don't think anybody can tell you the answer to who's staying and who's going, because there's a lot of guys eligible to stay, but yet they took part in senior day, and then again there's some guys, I guess, that didn't take part in senior day, and they may be gone. And right now, this period right now, we'll find out who stays and goes, and a lot of it's going to depend on what you have coming back to work with during the spring. And again, in the spring, they could go to spring practice and turn around and leave you. Mm-hmm. and it's at a point right now that I think that's going to happen. I noticed the Michigan quarterback, who's the number 2 quarterback, he's in the portal now, and so those are things that's just one guy, but I'm sure there's others, ready to roll, and who they are, who knows, but. 1 year doesn't sound real good to me as far as taking a kid that just has 1 year, and unless you don't have anybody, it's they don't even get to know people on the team in 1 year, really, and that's the hard thing about bringing people in. They in some ways disrupt the chemistry that has been made at some positions, and now you got somebody stepping in front of them, and so on and so forth. But the thing I know for a fact that Matt is one guy that is good at developing players. He's done it in the past at both places, and that's really a strong thing.
Charlie McBride's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, it takes a special coach to really develop, and speak to that from your coaching life, because you guys had good ball players, but you guys helped make a lot of good ball players. Tell us a little bit about the how the sausage is made with being a developmental program.
Well, in that part of it, I think first of all you need to have a good weight program, and I know I don't know what our weight program's like, but I just happened to be at Ohio State one time when Dave Kennedy was there, and the agility and the things that he did, all that work pertained to football, and they kept times on the kids. They show so they could see improvements, and a lot of their drills were timed so that the players could see their improvement as they went through it. And weight training was important, but they also had a tremendous program that way. That's one of the ways to develop kids, just as far as their physical ability. The other thing is somewhat of a mental thing as you go through. You have a new coach. He's gonna work on talking to you about the mental aspects of the game, and who knows how much of it's been talked about before. I don't know, but I think each coach in the position spends time, encouraging the players, to focus, to concentrate on things, And, there's times when you can rest and there's times when you can't, and things like that. But the teaching part of it is what I always said. I always talk to clinics about being a teacher rather than a coach, because I think the coach for depth is really important. And I listened to the guy at Purdue the other day on the Big Ten Network, and he said our defensive line is the one position we have where we have depth for next year, and we're real excited about that. Well, we haven't recruited a defensive lineman in 2 years. And, we brought a kid in that's going to graduate, a couple quit, and things like that. So there's some real problems in some of the areas that they'll have to really develop. Maybe develop the kids we have here.
Charlie McBride's with us. Coach, before we say goodbye, about 90 seconds on Wisconsin. They went a different route. The world thought Leonard was going to get it. They went with Fickell. Fickell's a really good coach, but there's upheaval in Madison right now.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because I would tell you this, that if the Ohio State job ever opened up and Fickell they'd raise their finger, he'd be there. And, and then there are, that's Wisconsin's a good job. I mean, there's no question. It's not something you have to run around and look, but Ohio State would be one that I would think that he would seriously consider moving to. But, that's the only thing. I think they got a good coach. I think they've got a guy that also has developed it and built a program. My mom went to school at Cincinnati, and I used to go to the games in the Thanksgiving Day games where Cincinnati played Miami, and it was Mid-America football. Right at that time, it really didn't compare with, say, the Big Ten and so on. So, if you're talking that kind of football, but developing players is all the same, no matter where you are.
Charlie McBride with us. Coach, enjoy your week. Keep that snow away, all right? And we'll get back after it next Monday.
Don't you be sending any of that snow over here.
We're going to probably get a little bit tomorrow night and just keep it. We'll keep it away from you.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, Coach. You take care. There he is. Well, there's Coach McBride. A Monday with Charlie. Coach made his feelings known on Mickey and on Bill Bush, and just where he thinks things need to be when it comes to staff. And I love hearing from coaches because they've been through it. They've been through the good and the bad. And that's something that Coach Rhule talked about. We'll have more from Coach Rhule and Trev Alberts. We've been teasing that side session, but really pretty insightful, not only on the process from Trev and the numbers.
The secret visit to Lincoln?
Yeah. Hey, we were talking, 3 weeks ago? We didn't know. He could have been having a T-bone in front of us, going incognito. Right?
Wearing a wig and sunglasses.
Something like that. Looked like just a crazed Nebraska fan. Whatever. But, yeah, he got the tour of the town. But Trev and Coach Rhule next. Bill Doleman 20 minutes away on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Charlie McBride, A Monday with Charlie. And that podcast, Hail Varsity Radio, can go to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play for specific segments or the whole show. Also, the Hail Varsity afternoon edition going to be posted for you on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel video. So check all of that out. Numbers to get in at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. So our old boy Doug Duda sent this, and we love Duda out there with ESPN Superstation, Kearney Hastings, Grand Island. So this is from Richard West, and he covers college football in Knoxville, and it's in reference to Satterfield, the OC at South Carolina. Spencer Rattler, remember Big Red? for Oklahoma a couple years back. He left when Riley left for SC and went to South Carolina, and you have Spencer Rattler entering the transfer portal. That's what Richard West reporting. It's believed that Satterfield and not only Rhule going to team up again offensively, but Spencer Rattler may be coming to Lincoln. How many free transfers do you get? I know it's my job to know this in the era of the portal, but he already got one freebie, didn't he? He got one freebie from Oklahoma to South Carolina.
He did, and that's why I'm going through the old tweets here of Richard West and seeing how reputable this guy is. We'll see.
Uncle Mark tweeting puke signs back at me. Yeah, I think he's a good quarterback, but he didn't live up to the old Heisman.
Wait.
Yes?
This guy appears to be a Tennessee fan of some sort.
Okay. So it's just bait and switch, or
I think it may be
wishful thinking?
Maybe a bait and switch or maybe a wishful thinking type thing. I'm trying to figure this one out.
Okay.
He's very invested in college football, but he also reported as of 2 weeks ago that Auburn was going after Urban Meyer, and that had no legs to it whatsoever.
Okay.
So we'll see on that one. It seems like it'd be early to
So he's just trying
for Rattler to be entering the portal.
He's trying to ruin your good buzz Monday.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right?
I'm thinking.
Let's hear a little bit from Trev Alberts and Matt Rhule today, the side sessions, and we'll spend time with Bill Doleman here in just a moment. But the contract details were laid out. We laid those numbers out to you. Brady Altman's with Hail Varsity, as things keep kicking up each year, incentive-based. At the end of the contract, Rhule will be making $12.5 million per season. At the beginning, next year it's 5.5. But the negotiation process, here is Trev Alberts on this process to land Matt Rhule.
This was, I don't want to get into all the details. I will say that this was a long and arduous process. And, it's hard enough to negotiate when between two parties, right? Two interested parties that involves agents and universities. I think the unique challenge here was we actually had a tri-party challenge, right? And so finding a way to structure a business arrangement that everybody was willing to sign off on was a bit of a challenge. And there were some fits and starts to it and some concern that ultimately, but quite frankly, I from day one, as I said, Matt Rhule was candidate 1A, and I believed he was the perfect person based on his experience and based on where we find ourselves today as a program, to help us rebuild and to build the foundation needed. And so while there was a period where it looked like it wasn't going to happen, we just decided to keep working and keep trying. And in the end, there was a delta. And I said, wait a minute, you want to coach the University of Nebraska, the University of Nebraska wants you. We're going to find a way to get this done. And so with the support of Chancellor Green and President Carter and our board, we're able to get that done. And I believe we hired the right person for the right time for our university.
Trev talks a little bit about Rhule's double secret visit to Lincoln. Don't know if it was a warm or a cold game day, but there was both towards the end of October and a couple of times in November.
My wife has been the superstar in this whole deal because she's been the one that was really good. So they flew in. I don't know exactly what the dates were, but my wife went to Omaha. They flew into Omaha, and they stayed with us at our house, and we were able to show them around Lincoln and the great state of Nebraska. It's just like recruiting. It was no different for them. If we get people here, they're blown away by Lincoln and Omaha and the state of Nebraska. And so I really thought, it's one thing to, see videos about our university. It's one thing to read about us, but you have to get them here. And so I thought it was important that early on, and I did Zoom calls with Matt. I talked to him several times, but I really wanted to get him here. And so in talking to his agent, I said, I want him here. Unfortunately, we had a donor that stepped up, and so we were able to get him flown in here and just really sit down. And Nebraska, it's just like because a lot of what I read about him, a lot of what he said, really resonated in what I believe in. those are authentic, genuine comments that he made. That's what I believe. That's what we believe that we need here. And so, when we were able to sit down and face to face and build that trust, I think that was a game changer for both of us.
So Rhule now talks about his secret visit to Lincoln.
It was a game day. Everyone was playing, so we were able to kind of fly in on our own.
Husker game day?
Yeah, it was a Husker game day. So we were able to fly in, and everyone was at the game. So
was it warm or cold?
we were able to do that, and then we kind of then we got away for a while. We had a trip planned, and Julie and I went away for a while, and because we just didn't want momentum to take over. We didn't want this whatever decision we made to be a decision of emotion. And so we got away for a little bit.
So that was Matt Rhule. Real quick, let's go back to Trev here, and the elephant today is, this is not negative, but it's been Mickey Joseph and some of the other members of staff. Is Mickey Joseph, Bill Bush. Where were things at with Mickey as part of this process? And Trev Alberts was asked about a prerequisite to keep Mickey. Was that part of this discussion point with Matt Rhule?
Well, it's really hard. It was certainly not a requisite of all the coaches. I did use that as part of the evaluation when I asked coaches. I asked them about what's their history been of retaining staff, and you could kind of get a sense for which coaches were a little bit more secure than others. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't have liked if Chancellor Green told me, Trev, we're going to hire you as the athletic director, but you're required to hire and keep all these people. It just isn't fair. So all that I asked for. And there's other people. It's just not Mickey Joseph. I think we have some really, really good people within our football program. Some of them aren't coaches. Some of them work in other areas. There's some great people that, and so Matt just needs to have an opportunity to sit down and talk with them, get to know them a little bit. And, he does have, as he mentioned, a little bit of a relationship or knowledge of Coach Joseph, which I think can help. And so it was not a requirement. And ultimately, this is going to be Matt Rhule's decision. He's the head coach, and he needs to hire the 10 assistant coaches that he believes gives him the best opportunity to win. As you mentioned, Eric, there's going to be high expectations, right? When you compensate a coach and have a $7 million salary pool, our expectations are going to be very high about output here.
So, Trev, emphatic with that, and I think Nebraska fans wouldn't have it any other way, and I don't think Matt Rhule would have it any other way. Last thought from Trev on where things are at with Mickey in this process.
He took it really good. Yes, Mickey, as we said at the press conference, he had the benefit of being a head coach for 9 games, and I continued meeting with Mickey weekly, and then ultimately, as a process, we sat down and he walked me through his vision, and Mickey's an outstanding coach, and he's obviously got a huge and bright future in the business, and we'll see whether it continues here. Obviously, Coach Rhule wants to sit down with him, but I have so much respect for Mickey Joseph and what he's done for our program, and our players do as well. But for me, looking at where our program is today, and perhaps some of its risk mitigation, if you will, having somebody that has built a program multiple times at multiple levels under difficult circumstances, Matt Rhule was the coach that was the most obvious choice for me.
Trev Alberts, the side session. We welcome in the pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, and the professor, Bill Doleman, with us here back on Hail Varsity. He's been a warrior. We've leaned on his knowledge and brilliance. He's covered Nebraska football for a lot of years. That's not an age comment on my thing. That is an absolute tip of the cap. Billy D., the pride of Fairbury. And what did today say to you? I know we went full force Saturday morning with, okay, the ink is dry, it's real, Matt Rhule's the next coach. Now you got to see Matt Rhule and Trev Alberts in action with this press conference, and you've coordinated these things, you've been a part of them, you've been at the university level, from Coach Osborne's farewell in December of '97 to Solich to Bernard Thomas was going to sack Steve Peterson. So you've seen the good and the bad of the press conferences with this coaching carousel the last 20 years at Nebraska. What did today say to you?
Said to me that Nebraska football matters. I thought Trev did a great job not just today, but throughout the entire search process. And he got the guy that he wanted. It's Trev 1A, like he said, or I'm sorry, it's Matt Rhule 1A, like he said he was. Probably. But we've talked about how this process has gone, that Trev's discipline in going through this in great detail, but taking great pains to keep it under wraps, if you will, really paid off in the end, because I think that Matt Rhule respected the process and respected that Trev was able to do it in such a disciplined manner. So Nebraska's leadership really showed through in this. It also shows me, again, that Nebraska football matters and Nebraska matters in the way that Matt Rhule talked about his family. You know, we talked earlier in the day that Nebraska wanted Matt Rhule to be his football coach, but Julie, Matt Rhule's wife, wanted Nebraska for her family. And Matt Rhule talks so much about how important family is to him, that that's his main job, that I think that really came through, that this is a great fit in terms of leadership, in terms of relationships, in terms of culture, and the desire to have a program that represents Nebraska well.
Bill Doleman back with us, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel.
I've
Bill,
lost you.
Okay. Quick timeout, and then we'll be back. Maybe you can read my lips. I'm going to just say we're going to take a timeout. And
I think he's got us now.
We'll continue to stream this as well. Hail Varsity, we're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Bill Doleman joining us. And a reminder to get buckled up. Using your seatbelt saves lives, prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. So let's just ask the question that everyone's wondering. How many of me are you hearing in your ear, Bill Doleman?
Not only one now.
Okay, we're all good. We've all taken a shot. We're home stretch. Finish line is about there. But, Bill, I want to go back to the presser. Elijah, jump in, too. And I think today, as much as we've heard about physical and mental toughness and running the football and stopping the run, I mean, run the ball guys freaking out. We praise not in sweatpants right now. You know what I mean? And the reality is, maybe for the first time in a long time, Nebraska is actually going to be playing Big Ten football stylistically with this new coach.
Oh, sorry, you want me to jump in or you want Bill to jump in first?
Doesn't matter, but I mean that's what it kind of says to me is Rhule gets it, and Nebraska will soon get it to be able to play and compete in the Big Ten. They'll look like other Big Ten peers for the first time probably since the Bo era.
I think I got you. You know, Matt Rhule has a philosophy of being a physical football team, of working hard, outworking your opponents. You know, I don't think he's going into the Big Ten, and it's already been talked about, that the Big Ten is going to have to adjust to Nebraska. And I don't think it's necessarily a matter of Nebraska having to adjust schemes to fit into the Big Ten. It's just a matter of work ethic and want to. You know, you've got players. You've got people who were recruited by other institutions. They just, they decided on Nebraska. But how are they going to be coached up? And how disciplined are they going to be from January until August? And then how focused are they going to be when September rolls around? And I think that Matt Rhule has proven that he's been able to get the most out of the talent that he's had in his programs. I like the comment that he said, I understand that you didn't choose to play for me, but I've chosen to come here to coach you. And so his job, as he's putting it out there for them, is to make them better so that they will compete be it in the trenches and the secondary and the backfield and the special teams, that they will compete at the level that it takes to utilize the talents that they have to not just compete, but win in the Big Ten. And we've heard development so much. And Trev Albert said, we want to be the most developmental program in all of college football. Okay, well, at some point you have to develop them and then produce, with that development. And I think that we have the guy at Nebraska now that sees that you have to build this thing from the foundations up and from the trenches. And I look forward. I hope that this Nebraska football team is more physical than we have ever seen, or certainly in the last 20 years.
Bill Doleman's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Bill, coming in from Matt here in the StreamYard. And Matt, I promise to see your comments getting there in just a second. And I guess that's where we'll go now. The assistant coaches, I think that's always been a big part of whoever Trev Alberts would bring in, that the assistants would be a big part of the sell job there, including Mickey Joseph. And Matt brings up the $7 million assistant pool. What is your reaction to $7 million for the assistants? I mean, 20 years ago, it'd be crazy, but now you look around $7 million. That's pretty much just on par with what the other big-time institutions around the country are offering.
Nebraska's all in. There's no doubt about that. I think back to when Tom retired. I'm not sure the entire staff combined made much over $1 million in salary. All of those guys, Tom, Charlie, Milt, George, Ron. I mean, they couldn't have been a $2 million staff total in terms of salary. Now, they certainly did better than that on the outside. But, again, this is just an example. I thought it'd be flirting with 6, maybe at 6, but to go 7, I mean, that is a buy-in. And now those guys have to produce. It can't just be like, we're bringing you in and we want you to be Nebraska football coaches. No, we want you to be winning football coaches. And, there's a lot of pressure on those guys these days. So I like the fact that he is attracting people who have been loyal to him, right? Whether it was at Temple and Baylor or one or the other at Carolina, they obviously believe in Matt Rhule enough that they're willing to leave jobs that they have. And if it is true that Marcus Satterfield is leaving South Carolina to come to Nebraska and doing so at the end of the season, I mean, that says a lot about loyalty and how they like working for the guy. But, you put numbers like that with a head coaching salary and a salary pool for your assistants, and they're putting pressure on their shoulders. There's no doubt about it, but it's just another example of Nebraska saying we are in this to win it.
Bill Doleman's with us, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Hail Varsity Monday edition. So what's your read with Mickey Joseph? If Mickey isn't a part of this coaching staff, is it, we're going to pull the Costanza, it's not you, it's me. Is that more of a Mickey thing? Or is it more of Rhule just sticking with his guys?
It may just be that's business. That's life in the coaching profession. Mickey maybe Mickey doesn't want to work for Matt Rhule. I don't know. I don't know any of that at all. I don't know the dynamic. Rhule has certainly said all of the right things in terms of, knowing of Mickey, his reputation, respecting the job that he's done over the last 3 months at Nebraska. And I'm sure that they will have a pretty serious conversation, maybe more so than Matt would have with other assistants, whether he did that at Temple, whether he did that at Baylor. I'm sure Carolina wiped out its entire staff. But I would imagine that the conversation that they have will be respectful toward the job that Mickey's done and the passion and the love the people of Nebraska have for Mickey Joseph. I'm sure Rhule understands that. If he's been looking at this Nebraska job for a while, he's savvy enough to understand what the buzz has been about Mickey Joseph. Now, there are some jobs that have come open today that might be good fits for Mickey at this stage of his life and career. UNLV in the Mountain West, that's a team that shockingly fired Marcus Arroyo. They went from 0 to a couple of wins to 5-7 this year. They won the Fremont Cannon I'm stunned by that. Is that in Mickey's, geographic footprint where he's so strong in the Southeast? Not necessarily, but I'm sure Mickey could be very good there. Tulsa came open today. Those might be good jobs for Mickey at this stage of his career. But he might want to stay at Nebraska, and it might be a fit for him. I don't know, but I do think that they will both be respectful of each other and respectful of Nebraska. And I think we all hope that Mickey stays, but understand if he doesn't.
Bill Doleman, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel will wind down a Monday edition. Hail Varsity continues on. We're presented by Currency.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Monday tomorrow. Mitch Sherman with us, Matt Schick with us. Good stuff today from Trev Alberts, Matt Rhule. Paul Myerberg, USA Today, has followed Coach Rhule every step of his career. Some up close and observance of what makes him tick so great. And Paul was the first to kind of throw out Nebraska and Rhule, so good to get caught up with him. The Pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman and Charlie McBride winding out this second hour. Reminder about Red Zone tickets, selling fun since 2001. You have tickets to buy or sell. You want to go see Huskers in Creighton this weekend. How about some volleyball action as the NCAA tournament underway? And, of course, the best concerts and theater seats along with the CWS. It all happens with your friends at RedZoneTickets.com. Omaha proud. They are local, and they have an incredible Better Business Bureau rating. Well earned, an A+, 100% guarantee on all your orders. You'll receive authentic tickets and experiences you'll never forget. Cross that moment in memory off your bucket list. RedZoneTickets.com. Log on today. Bill, Elijah, okay, you have Auburn making it official with Hugh Freeze. Does Jim Leonard have a chance to go steel cage match against Luke Fickell to reclaim the throne?
That was stunning. Not so stunning that Luke Fickell took that job, but the way that whole thing went down and the way Jim Leonard was, I don't want to say disrespected, but, Mickey got a bump to coach Nebraska. Leonard was just like, okay, you drive the car for a while. You're not going to get anything more out of it. Really surprising. Now, they may have had Fickell in their back pocket for the last several weeks, and it just came to the forefront. We've talked so much about Riley to USC. And all of that last year, the way that has developed the last 24 hours, I would certainly rather be in Nebraska's boat with Nebraska's leadership and the way things are feeling here in Lincoln today than in Madison, because there's a whole lot of WTF going on up there. And that's with recruits, it's with fans, the Leonard faction, all of that. It'd be really surprising to me if Leonard stays on board. They may be trying to get him to do that, much like Nebraska's trying to get Mickey, but that just has not gone down very well at all. And that's going to divide people for a long time to come. And where he goes, who knows? Maybe he's the guy to go to Cincinnati. I don't know, but that's really unfortunate for the job that he did and was asked to do. Nebraska and Wisconsin were going in two different directions the way they handled it.
Yeah, and Bill, it's a case of two different kinds of rebuilds for Matt Rhule and Luke Fickell, where Matt Rhule is trying to get the talent on this roster up and fix some recruiting woes, and for Luke Fickell, it's trying to bring Wisconsin in the 21st century, the NIL, the transfer portal era. It's interesting, but those two, Rhule and Fickell, are going to be linked at the hip for a while based on how this process went.
It'll be fun the rest of the week. Bill, we will trank, dart, and duct tape you again Friday, schedule permitting, but thanks for your time and all your insight and help this weekend and today, man.
It's always fun to talk Husker football, and as I said a couple of days ago, we're going into, I think, a positive offseason as opposed to the last several years, and today is a good day to be a Husker, so go Big Red.
Pride of Fairbury right there, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Show's going to be on the podcast for you, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Talk to you tomorrow.